What's up YouTube, and welcome back to Homebrew Subaru. In this episode I'm going to install some brakes. So what's up everyone? After finally getting the suspension all together, I moved right on to the brakes, and well, I've decided I would start spraying them. Even though they had this anti-corrosion coating on all of the rotors, I decided to go ahead and just give them a spray anyway. The rear rotors are certainly an upgrade from the stock rotors. They are a larger rotor by about, I think it's almost 20 millimeter, and they are vented. The front rotors are basically the same size as the original WRX rotors. And of course we're moving up to 4 piston in the front and 2 piston in the rear. Now all of the calipers and the adapter brackets were hit with quite a few shots of clear coat. I was thinking of doing them with color and painting them, I almost thought green for a second and red, and I was really going to end up with black. I just decided, well, they look pretty good, and I've done the same on the 240, just kind of leaving a very industrial style looking brake. And I think it's going to actually look better than paint. So I have everything prepped and ready to go. I'm going to pretty much blast through the front just because it's quick and easy to do. The rear, I'm going to have a little bit more time installing the parking brake. But the other thing I've kind of got going on today is I ended up selling the 2011 Impreza last night, and the guy's supposed to come back this morning to finish up payment and do the paperwork and head over to get the ownership changed over. So I'm going to be strapped for a little bit of time here. I'm not sure how much I'm going to film. I'll get the front done, we'll work onto the rear and see how things are turning out. Now I've already gone ahead and put the front brakes back on. I'm just running so limited for time this weekend that I've just decided I got to start smashing this thing together. So I've got the caliper in place. It's basically just bolted directly to the steering knuckle, and then when it's bolted on, the front pads can just slip down in there, the pins go through, and then this little retaining clip on the end kind of holds it all together. I don't know if this shim plate is on upside down or not, but I don't think it's going to make a big difference, and if it makes noise then obviously I'll have to do something about it, but I think it'll be okay. The hydraulics I'm going to leave for now. I do have the new stainless line in place, but I'm pretty sure I just don't have the time to do any bleeding this weekend, so I'm likely going to do some gravity bleeding to bleed out all of the brake fluid that's in the system now anyway, and then I can hook up things and bleed it as I need to. So I'm ready to move on to the rear, but I'll probably come back to the front at the end of the video just to maybe put on this hub adapter and then maybe even a wheel. Now as for the rear, there's a little bit more work that needs to be done here. In order to fit those larger rotors, this little outer rim of backing plate needs to be removed. Some people try and cut it to retain some of it, but most people remove it, and that's what I'm going to do. There's just some little spot welds that are holding this thing on, and it is pretty pliable metal. A lot of people are just able to kind of start chiseling and break the welds from in behind. Might just try my carbide bit first just to see if I can grind into it to let it loose and go about it that way. And then I'm gonna go ahead and clean up as much of the backing plate that there is, because there's quite a bit of rust on it and it's certainly dirty. And then probably give it a blast of paint before putting some of the parts back on. Once I have everything cleaned up, then I can start going together, and it'll be pretty straightforward at that point. Now this carbide bit, I think I bought it off Snap-on truck many years ago, probably 10 or 12 years ago. I've relentlessly used this thing for so many things like this job, and it just went through these like butter. You can see, I mean, the metal is pretty thin, but just driving right in the center of all those welds, that guy's gone, no problem. So now I can just clean up the spots a little bit, clean up everything with wire brush as best I can, and get some paint on there. I'm just waiting for some primer to dry up on the other side, and I've come to the right rear, found out probably the main reason why the ABS is not working. Someone changed out this hub at some point, and probably the bearing's been changed, but they didn't actually swap over the tone ring that bolts to the back side of the hub. And to get it on there, you literally have to like disassemble everything just to get the ring back on. And I don't have one on hand, and had I known that it was missing before, I could have gone ahead and actually had it replaced. But seeing it the way it is, I may end up deleting the ABS on the car at some point, but it's a decision that I'll make in the future. Actually remove the hydraulic unit and plumb it out of the system or not. But yeah, that's kind of a surprise to me. Now, something else I've had to address while doing the rear parking brake is I'm actually going completely to the 05 center console, and in order to use it, you change out the parking brake handle. The old handle sits over here on this side, and from what I can tell, I've got the cable rigged up and it's going through here. The holes are pretty much lined up to bolt the handle on, and it looks like everything's going to be okay. I'm not going to have to change anything, but just in case, I do have the other cable. I think it is the same length, so there's no sense in playing with that, and there is quite a bit of adjustment available there. So I'll just make sure those rear parking brake shoes are completely adjusted up, and then try and address this at a later time. Now I've got this corner all together, it's all painted up and the parking brake shoes are on. They just pretty much need to be adjusted nice and tight so that, winter comes around and I give that parking brake a yank, I can kind of slip into my driveway and stuff like that. Have a little fun with it, if you know what I mean. So these rear rotors are quite a bit larger than the 02 to 05 rear rotors that you get with just the single rear piston caliper. In order to get these, because in 06-07 WRX they went to the 5 by 114.3 lug stud pattern. In order to get them in the 5 by 100 lug pattern, I'm pretty sure that I ordered these for 2005 Legacy GT. Because it maintained the 5 by 100 pattern but gave the proper size vented rotor that I was looking for. Don't quote me on that, that's just kind of what I'm going off on memory, because it was quite some time ago I picked these up. So now that I just gonna adjust this a little bit more, and then I'll slip on the caliper and we'll take another look at it. So I have this corner all together and bolted up. I had a couple issues getting this thing together. For one, having both shim plates in place, the pads were just too tight. They weren't moving in and out well enough, and I just decided, well, I'll use the one shim, make sure I lube the top really good, because that steel will try and ride into the aluminum and wear into it prematurely anyway. So it's something I'll want to keep an eye on. But the other issue was this retaining clip. It's obviously the wrong one. I mean, it's shaped similar to what it should be. This one was in the box for the other side, but it's just too long. And I was able to kind of mangle the ends of it so that it definitely can't come out of there, and it's not going to rub on anything. It's just kind of, not right. But I did something similar on the 240, and it's been together this whole time. So I think that's just the way it's going to have to be. I'll give you a quick look at the bracket from the inside. A little bit difficult for me to get the proper angle this low to the ground, and I probably just kicked up a whole pile of dust, but you get the idea. So as you can see, I've gone ahead and bolted up the hub adapter and thrown on a wheel. These are the rotor grids that I had on the 240. The spacer is a 25 mil. I looked and looked for 15 mil spacers for a long, or 15 mil adapters, I should say, for a long time, and I just couldn't find any. This is what I opted to do, was to adapt from 5100 to 5114.3 so that I could use these wheels. But after seeing them on the car, the offset is a little bit further out than what I was hoping, and I'm just not sure exactly what I'm going to do now, whether I'm going to use these for the time being or not. Now, of course, the suspension isn't compressed and camber hasn't been set in at all, but I'll kind of give you a side profile so you get a better idea. Now the rims are 17 by 8 and the tires are 225s, so it's definitely more meat than what would have been on a stock Impreza or even this year WRX. But they just poke a little bit too much, and considering this is the front that is a little bit wider, there's not really a flare that I want to use on this. So unless the suspension compresses in a little bit and I can adjust the camber so that it's a little bit more flush, I don't know, I might have to think of a different option. So I've definitely run out of time this weekend to continue on and bleed the brakes. It's just something I'm going to leave for another time, probably do off camera anyway. Seeing the wheel the way that it is, I've kind of got my mind spinning, and I may actually end up swapping the 18-inch XXR wheels that I put on the 240 back onto this car, and these rotors back onto the 240, just to get more proper offset. The XXRs were quite flush on this car without spacers, but I kind of wonder if I'm going to need spacers because now the 4-piston calipers, because I did need the spacers on the 240 in order to make those wheels fit over the 300ZX brakes. Anyway, things to think about, and definitely not for this weekend. If you like this video, definitely give it a thumbs up, and if you're new here and you haven't already, please consider hitting that subscribe button for me. Leave your questions and comments further down below, and I'll see you in the next one.